to the PowerCat Game Day postgame. John Kurtz, Cole Manbeck, Corey Dean, and in a weird new world where we get a chance to meet up on Sunday and talk about football. Not the most exciting way to kick off this PowerCat Game Day element, gentlemen. This was maybe the most 2020 start of football potentially ever. You guys both talked about it on PowerCat Game Day yesterday morning, that the team would be dealing with being shorthanded and some injuries and some guys missing, but I don't know that anybody thought that this one would end up being a loss for the Cats. Just kind of your initial thoughts on yesterday's game.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I tried to get people prepared a little bit for this. I thought it was going to be a tricky game. I know I don't remember what exactly I predicted for a final score, maybe like 13 K-State by a couple of touchdowns, but I was worried just because of the circumstances of everything going on, combined with whatever personnel issues you might be dealing with. I mean, the offensive line thing, I think, is a major problem. Not a great year to be breaking in an entirely new offensive line with no spring practice and all of that. And, I mean, Arkansas State's a pretty game program. 9 straight winning seasons, 9 straight bowl games. You know, I don't know exactly what they are this year. They didn't look all that great against Memphis. So this may be more like a 5 or 6 or 7 win team. But they were certainly capable enough of winning if K-State wasn't totally ready to play. And obviously they weren't. I mean, I just think there were a number of things. Like a lot of times you want to find a scapegoat right after a game, but I don't know that there's one particular scapegoat here. The offensive line was bad. They couldn't run the ball. Sloppy, missed 2 field goals, had 8 penalties. Skylar Thompson overthrew about 4 or 5 balls that probably had 14 points at least to the game. Malik Knowles had a big drop that probably cost you some points. I mean, the defense could not stop one. I mean, it was one guy that you were just getting torched by the entire game. So, I don't know, Cole. There's a lot of blame to spread around a bunch of different ways.
Well, I think that's the thing, John. If you get on social media after the game, it seems like they are, and a lot of people are trying to make Skylar Thompson really the scapegoat for this game. And I'm not saying Skylar Thompson played great by any means. You know, he obviously missed some throws, and being as experienced as he is, as much playing time he's had under his belt, you know, those are throws that he needs to make. You know, not maybe all of them, but he needs to connect on a higher percentage of some of those longer throws that they had a chance on. But like you mentioned, Knowles dropped a perfect throw 50 yards down the field. The ball that he did shoot, you know, over Sebastian Taylor a little bit in the end zone, that still hit his hands. It could have been a play that was made. You know, overall, you look at the numbers, you know, Skylar Thompson was okay, probably average, really. And I just think he's being made out to be the scapegoat when the offensive line was really bad. K-State couldn't run the ball at all, and the defense couldn't stop anything, especially in the final 3 quarters. I mean, they really struggled on the defensive side of the ball. We knew there would be kinks to be worked out. This would be a bumpy game, especially Arkansas State is a formidable opponent, especially to open up against. It's not an ideal situation, obviously, with the pandemic, but then you're also opening up against an Arkansas State team that already has a game under its belt. So they're in a little bit more of a rhythm. They've got their game legs under them a little bit more. And, you know, they went on and played a tough Memphis team on the road already. So they got used to the speed of the game and acclimated with that. K-State having so many guys out in practice these last, you know, few weeks, especially on the offensive line and practicing with skeleton crews really at the receiver and offensive line positions for a while. We knew that would be rough. I didn't think it would be this rough. And if I'm being fully honest, I think the biggest shock to me was K-State's secondary. I didn't think K-State's secondary would play nearly as bad as they did, especially getting A.J. Parker back, their top corner from last year after he missed the second half of the year. And the secondary just couldn't stop anything in that game to give up nearly 500 yards, albeit to a talented offense. This was an Arkansas State offense that was missing its second best receiver in Dahu Green for the game, who had 100 yards against Memphis the previous week. And so really it was Jonathan Adams that you had to take away. And the shock to me was that K-State really never took him away. They didn't double him, and he had 3 touchdown catches.
Yeah, I would echo that. I'll jump in. I would say I would echo that, Cole, as the biggest surprise, because I mean, everything we've been hearing internally about the team is that they felt like the defense was ahead of the offense, and that they felt really good about the secondary. Now, to be fair, they were down to a 3rd-string safety with Brian Hennington in there. And listen, Chris Kleiman stuck up for him big time post-game press conference and saying, hey, this is a guy that just needs more reps at safety, and basically was saying this was an unfair position for him to be put in. And I would totally agree with that. And it's a great story that Ryan Hennington has turned himself into what he is, a guy that can contribute for K-State. But I just think back to my own self. Now, he was a stud at Junction City High School, but like 4 years ago, I was calling a Manhattan High Junction City game where Ryan Hennington was playing quarterback for Junction City. Now he's being asked to try and defend Jonathan Adams, a potential NFL receiver out there on the field for you in a game like that. That is difficult. So personnel issues really started to creep up on them, and honestly is a huge concern moving forward with the health of Jerron McPherson and Wayne Jones in question.
So that's exactly where I was kind of headed with that conversation. Is it so as you move forward, two places that you knew you were going to struggle is not only you're struggling, but like you mentioned, you're playing a guy who was playing 4-string quarterback last year at safety, and you're down to your 3rd-string starting center. You have a week off, which is great. K-State needs it, but you get the Sooners next, who probably could have scored 100 on Saturday if they'd wanted to. Your bigger concern for your opening Big 12 game, your secondary or your offensive line, two places that in the Big 12, these are not places where you can struggle and be effective.
Yeah, to me, it's it's the secondary. I mean, buying nose, but especially considering the opponent, I think you have to go with the secondary because, yeah, man, Spencer Radler, 290 and 3 or 4 touchdowns in one half, and then got pulled at halftime. I mean, they just rolled all over Missouri State, and that Oklahoma was worried about being able to even play the game in the waning moments of the week because they had so many guys out. So that's pretty impressive. That'll definitely catch your attention. I think it really is the secondary because there's some weird stuff going on. Like Tyrone Lewis, we heard a lot of really good things about at safety, and he's a legitimate scholarship player. And I believe he played special teams yesterday, but didn't actually play safety. So I don't know what is going on there. Wayne Jones, I know, said that he tweeted out, and it's great news that he just had a concussion, but don't know what the status for him is going to be. Jerron McPherson had an injury apparently bothering him before the game, and don't know what the status for him is going to be. But you're talking about getting down to real bare-bones skeleton crew in the secondary. And I don't know, Cole. I mean, I start thinking about that Oklahoma game in, was it 2018? The last time K-State went down there and just got absolutely punked with like 700 yards of total offense. I mean, you start going down that road and thinking about that, it's not very fun.
Yeah, I definitely have a fear of that, John. And Corey, to your point, I echo what John said with the secondary. In this league, especially when you face so many high-profile, high-potent passing attacks and your secondary struggles against an Arkansas State team like that, it gives you some concern. And so, the safety position, I think, is all of our greatest concerns because, like John said, we don't know what's going to happen with Wayne Jones going forward. Is he going to be out a couple weeks with the concussion that he had tweeted out that he has? And then at the safety position, obviously, McPherson, he's a stud. And look, when he went out of the game late in the first quarter yesterday, I thought the defense really struggled after that. And so you got to hope that you get him back. Tyrone Lewis is a talented redshirt freshman, had a lot of offers out of high school. They've got him actually interestingly positioned behind Wayne Jones on the depth chart, really at 3rd right now. I wonder if they use this bye week to try and maybe move him to the other safety position, try to get him acclimated there because, I think they're going to need some better depth behind McPherson over there as well. And then you got to hope A.J. Parker plays a little bit better going forward. I thought he struggled in his first game back yesterday. You got Lance Robinson, Keandre Thomas at the corner positions. I thought William Jones was good. The other thing that hurt them, guys, is they didn't take away Arkansas State's running game. I mean, Arkansas State gashed them for nearly 160 yards, almost 5 yards per carry. And so Arkansas State was so balanced, and they're not really a team that's known for running the ball. And so that hurt. And then obviously we talked about the penalties. They had them in a 3rd and 9 situation in the red zone when it was tied, or when K-State was actually ahead. And they jump off sides, K-State does, puts them in a 3rd and 4, and then they're able to run that kind of jump pass type play where they move the tight end out for a touchdown. But that play wouldn't have worked probably if they're in 3rd and 9. K-State puts them in a 3rd and 4 because of a silly mistake. And that's a situation you get in. So K-State just shot itself in the foot so many times in that game. You look at it overall, they had 4 drives on offense inside the Arkansas State 40-yard line, and they came away with 3 points combined on those 4 drives. So that hurts. Obviously, you missed 2 field goals. You don't want to be kicking field goals in general. And then you had to punt one time when you were inside their 40. So just a lot of squandered opportunities. I'm sure Arkansas State could say the same thing, though, on their end, as they made a lot of mistakes too and really kept K-State in the game when they really outplayed them.
So are you guys surprised to see that K-State continues to struggle with a little bit of a trickeration when the other team – like we saw it going back to the bowl game, right? Like Navy pulls one off, and now it's like it's almost a thing that you expect the opponent's going to throw like ran a jet sweep pass for a 40-yard plus touchdown. You got a a fake punt that seemingly the entire stadium knew was probably coming, and you couldn't really get that one going on. The jump pass, stuff like that. In a league like the Big 12, where teams are just like chomping at the bit now to load up that kind of gimmickry stuff, because K-State just seems to bite on it. And I know you're playing shorthanded. I know you got guys out of position and all of that, but is it a little bit concerning to see stuff like that still continue to be effective, especially when it happens in places where it seems like it's obvious that it's coming?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure that it's a trend. I mean, there's no doubt it's a trend, because we were going back and thinking about it. It's like Oklahoma last year hit them with one. There was another one, obviously, that didn't work, but Navy hit them with one. I think it was like Oklahoma State and Texas were also a couple of games where K-State got hit with trick plays last year. So it's definitely been a thing. And I think some of that, you're going to be more susceptible to it defensively with the strategy that they like to employ, which is more aggressive than what K-State was doing under Tom Hayes and Bill Snyder there for a long time. And I'm fine with that trade-off if you're going to be more aggressive as a defense and give up some of those every once in a while. But yeah, I mean, there were three of them really that were pulled off. I mean, right after the fake punt, Arkansas State rather went to another one that worked to help get them close to the goal line. So,
the reverse throw to the quarterback, right?
Yeah, it's really frustrating. I mean, they've got to do something to get it figured out. As far as the fake punt, I know it was frustrating, and I think in the moment I thought too, like, I mean, how are you not ready for that? I think they were. I mean, they had punt safe called there. It was just, again, and I hate to harp on him, but it was Ryan Hennington matched up on Jonathan Adams. And the other thing there is that the punter makes a nice throw, actually, to get it there, which you can have that one-on-one matchup, but you still have to make the throw. So, you do have to tip your cap to them in some regard there that they were able to get that matchup and then actually execute the play. But I think they're always going to be susceptible to some of that, and it's going to be everyone's cried for a long time about, hey, bend but don't break. That defense is really frustrating. We don't like that. Well, now you have a more aggressive defense. You're also going to give up more of that stuff. But certainly they've got to try and do something to keep it from being 3 times a game.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, John, I mean, you're right. I mean, you can go back to the Texas Tech game last year when it was obvious that Tech would have to run a fake punter. They're probably going to lose the game late in the fourth quarter, and K-State gives up a huge play on a fake punt. Obviously, this one happened yesterday, multiple trick plays yesterday. The Texas game, as you mentioned, wide open for a touchdown that put Texas ahead last year down in Austin, Oklahoma game, et cetera. It's happened a lot, and they're usually very wide open. I mean, it's the K-State doesn't have anyone close when it does happen. To your point, that's going to happen when you play an aggressive defense, but you got to be more disciplined. You can't let it continue to happen, because otherwise everyone's going to run a trick play against you every single game, and you can't be giving up a touchdown every single time someone runs a trick play. So that is a bit of concern. The fake punt yesterday, like you mentioned, look, K-State was obviously in a punt safe situation the way they were lined up. The only thing I would say is, when you see Jonathan Adams on the field on the punt team, when he's not usually on the field in that situation, I'd probably be moving a couple guys over to double him and not just leave Ryan Hennington kind of matched up alone on him in that situation. It almost seemed to me that maybe Arkansas State was looking to see what K-State did, and they saw that they had a mismatch with Hennington, and maybe then they elected, okay, we're going to see what we have. We'll either pooch punt it, or we're going to throw it up here for grabs, see if we can get a play or get a penalty. And to me, that's maybe a schematic mistake by K-State, but they were ready for it. It's just, you could maybe question how they aligned up on that situation. So it's a frustrating deal. Look, I mean, everyone's frustrated with that game yesterday, and there's a lot of different ways you could point the finger to your point earlier. I mean, it's just the offensive line, the running game. I'm sure we'll talk about the offense a little bit more here in a minute, because that's obviously a huge concern as well.
Yeah, throw it up for Adams was a pretty good strategy most of the game yesterday for Arkansas State. So pretty effective, that dude all day. So let's kind of flip the script a little bit. And I know it's pretty easy to get down on some stuff, but there were a few highlights from that game. You blocked a punt. You had Deuce looked really good in his first game. He had some flashes where it looked like he could be a pretty good playmaker for you. Sebastian Taylor wasn't fantastic, but he also had, a pretty good run where he shows that he can do some things that are pretty impressive. And Briley Moore we talked about throwing it to the tight end for years, and holy cow, if you've got a guy that you can absolutely kind of not only toss it to, but show that if you needed some short catches and kind of clutch situations, he could be a guy for you. Some high points for you from the game yesterday.
Yeah, I think to me, the short list of encouraging signs, bright spots, if you will, would be, number one, I think Deuce Vaughn, because we had heard about him throughout fall camp and that he was making an impact, but I was still surprised to see him on the initial depth chart. But you can see why. I mean, it reminded me last year when we first started to see Josh Youngblood out on the field. You could tell he just moves at a different speed. He's got a different kind of athleticism to him, than a different burst than most everybody else on K-State's roster. I mean, that's really apparent with Deuce Vaughn. And I mean, it's not just apparent to all of us. It was apparent to the broadcast crew. I mean, like, you could tell Gus and Joel, like, those guys were excited every time he's touching the ball. So, he's somebody that needs to get involved more. And he's green. I mean, there were a couple times where he's bouncing stuff to the outside when he probably should just cut it up and take 4 or 5 yards. But he's been a home run hitter. I know, like, Derek Young from KSO had told us they went to go see him play a high school game last year, and he had like 8 touchdowns on 12 touches. I mean, so he's used to being a guy that's taking it all the way all the time, which is good, but you're going to have to learn how to rein that in. But he's also, I was struck by him in the post-game press conference. Just, they've talked about his maturity and just the way that he talks about, like, schemes and the game. He's a coach's son, and you can tell. You can tell. So, like, I think he's going to take off with a pretty rapid ascent because of all that stuff.
Even more impressive that he's able to do that with no spring football.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And he talked about he was going into detail about how he broke down their install from 2019 and in different chunks and pieces. I mean, it's stuff that you don't expect a true freshman to be doing. So, I mean, I think that's a great sign. I've been a huge Riley Moore guy. I think he's also high on the list of positive things. And I think you can immediately tell, like, Skylar and him have had a relationship for years, and you can see that. And you can see the trust that Skylar and the coaching staff have in him, as evidenced by, I thought the biggest example of that was the 4th down conversion that they had on I think that was the go-ahead field goal drive late in the game. But they drew a play right up for Riley Moore on the sideline and completed it to him. So I think that's going to be huge. As long as he can stay healthy, I mean, that's the question with him, kind of like it is with Malik Knowles. I think it'll make a giant difference. And honestly, though, if I'm giving an MVP of the game, for K-State, I'm probably giving it to Sebastian Taylor, who is he's a guy that I've heard about for a long time. You've wanted him to take the step forward and become what he looked like yesterday for a while. And it appears that he finally is, because not only did he have, I think it was close to a 100-yard receiving game, if not 100 yards, but he probably should have had another 50 or 60 yards and a touchdown or two, because Skylar missed a couple of those throws. I mean, he was just running open all day. So, there's a picture you can paint here. If Malik Knowles can become a little more consistent and or stay healthy, you pair him with what Taylor looked like yesterday, plus Riley Moore, and then you'll get Josh Youngblood back at some point. You can see a lot more explosiveness. Throw in Deuce Vaughn. You can see a lot more explosive potential with the offense, but it's going to be a matter of all those pieces coming together.
Yeah, Sebastian was 98 on 4 catches. Pretty impressive. Cole, guys that you thought were good?
Yeah, I'd echo what John said. And I thought, Sebastian Taylor, that one of the encouraging things with him is not only did he catch the football when it was thrown to him, but he was getting separation throughout the game. And, the explosion, I think he looked a little bit faster out there than we've seen in the past now that he's going into his junior year. And, he obviously has always looked the part. He's a big physical wide receiver. And now, they threw it up to him one time for a 42-yarder where he just outfought the DB. He's a big physical receiver. So I think that's really encouraging. To John's point, once you get Youngblood back and Wyking Gill, who I think will actually have a really good year, and hopefully those guys will be back by Oklahoma, the passing games should be much better. I mean, when you add in a Riley Moore, a talented tight end like that, Nick Lenners, I know he didn't have a ball thrown his way yesterday, but he's 2 years removed from an ACL injury now. I think he'll be a little bit more explosive at the tight end position. They've got Sammy Wheeler back, who had a nice 24-yard grab yesterday at the tight end position, more of a receiving threat coming off a torn ACL. Feel good for him that he's already back on the field. I mean, he tore that ACL, I believe, against KU last year, which is not that far removed from doing it. That's 9 months, and he's already back on the field. And then Youngblood, if you get Knowles, to me, it's about Malik Knowles. He's obviously the guy with the most talent, but he's just got to be more consistent. He can't drop that ball yesterday. That's a 50-yard throw down the middle of the field where it's perfectly delivered to him. He's got to come up with that play. He makes a sensational one-handed catch, but then he doesn't make that play. Then he cuts off a route. And we don't know exactly whose fault this was, but in the first quarter on a 3rd and 18, Skylar Thompson delivers the ball deep down the sideline. And if Malik Knowles keeps running, it's a touchdown. It's a 70-yard plus touchdown. Assuming the ball is accurate, Knowles keeps running. He cuts the route off. don't know if it's a miscommunication thing. That's something, first game after a pandemic or during a pandemic, not a lot of practices together, that might happen. But Knowles has to be better than one catch for 27 yards. But overall, I think the passing game is going to be improved if Skylar Thompson improves his consistency and starts hitting on more of those big throws, because I think they have more weapons there. And then just echoing what he said about Deuce Vaughn, I thought he was a little quicker and even more explosive than I thought. We obviously heard great things about him. I thought he looked great. And I'm a little surprised they didn't use him more in the passing game. They threw it to him once yesterday, and he got 24 yards, and they never threw it to him again. They threw one of those little bubble screens, and they actually did that back-to-back times, one to him and then one to Shabastin Taylor. They both worked for first downs, and they never ran that play again. So I was a little surprised with that. But overall, I think you can feel encouraged that if Skylar Thompson and the offensive line can become a little more consistent, the passing game should be improved if they can give him time to throw.
Well, if we dare, let's look around the Big 12, although – that was an interesting day of Big 12 football yesterday. So 3 games are postponed or canceled. K-State takes a loss. Iowa State takes an upset loss. Kansas loses. Texas Tech wins by 2, has to stop a 2-point conversion to beat Houston Baptist. And then you have 3 blowouts. I was expecting things to be weird in week 1 of college football. I don't know if the Big 12 looking back is like, those non-conference, that one non-conference schedule thing, maybe we should have skipped on that. It wasn't a really great look for the Big 12, short of OU and Texas, who look like they could beat anybody right now.
Right, and the problem there is, this is the Big 12's problem yesterday, Oklahoma and Texas looked awesome on the Longhorn Network in pay-per-view. So
nobody saw it, right?
Nobody's watching them. Meanwhile, K-State's on Fox, the big noon game, and Kansas is the spotlight game at the end of the night, and Iowa State's the spotlight game on ESPN at 11. So those are the games that everybody's watching. So a lot of cheap, easy jokes to get in on the Big 12, and hey, man, deservedly so. Like that was pretty bad. I don't know, like Kansas. Iowa State is the team with the expectations, and I think where you should rightfully start and all of that. I'm going to start with Kansas, though, just because, to get down 28-0 and just look physically manhandled. They made Coastal Carolina look like Clemson, just with how physically dominant they looked for a lot of that game. Like, that is not anything that should be acceptable for Kansas. Second half, they've had some fight to them, but like that first half was just brutal. Just awful. I don't know what exactly the plan is right now at Kansas. I just listened to Les Miles' press conference this morning too, and it's like I don't know. Listening to him talk, how you'd be inspired to any level of confidence about what's going on there. So in terms of worst performances of the day, I think Kansas does take the cake for that first half. I saw some. It was Matt Galloway, who covers Kansas, said it should be declared the worst half in the history of the program. I would imagine it's got to be in that conversation. But I think actually the second worst performance out of all of that was Texas Tech beating Houston Baptist 35-33, because that's a really bad team that I think has only been playing college football for it's in the 2000s. It's under 20 years, somewhere around 10, 15 years. And somebody on Twitter put this out there. I was trying to Google it here real quick to look at what their stadium looks like. I saw a tweet of someone saying half of Houston Baptist Stadium is a CVS, and that's legitimately true, that half of their stadium, there's a CVS attached to their stadium. And that's who Texas Tech was a 2-point conversion away from going to overtime with yesterday. So that's pretty bad. I think K-State honestly winds up at number 4 on the list of poor performances yesterday in the Big 12. The thing with Iowa State is just the expectations that come along with it. Louisiana,
top 25 team.
Yeah, Louisiana's an 11-win team from last year. They're pretty good. They are legitimately
the hype
good.
was getting thrown out, hey, maybe Iowa State has the best defense in the Big 12. And you're like, eesh. And everyone's dealing with crazy stuff. But, yeah, that not a good look. Cole, was there anyone that just stood out other than the fact that I think that you threw out on Twitter that, hey, that Spencer Radler dude's pretty good for Oklahoma?
Well, I would say if everyone listened to Power Cat Game Day, maybe Derek of K-State Online and I downplayed Oklahoma a little bit this year. John was all on the Oklahoma train, and Lincoln Riley, and I questioned a little bit how good they'd be on the offensive line. They had a lot of guys, they had several guys opt out at the running back position. They had Trey Sermon transfer from there. They have several guys with COVID that were scratched from
Almost didn't
yesterday's
play.
game. Yeah. And so, and you know, the thing with Spencer Rattler, he was the top ranked quarterback in the country at high school, but we haven't seen Lincoln Riley really with a quarterback that he recruited out of high school since he's been at Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield was a transfer. Every quarterback he's had essentially has been a transfer that came in and played right away with experience. And I thought Rattler, you know, with the pandemic and all the everything thrown in and not probably be able to practice consistently and get spring ball and all of that, I thought he might be a little bit inconsistent, especially early in the year. It's why I thought it was good for K-State to get Oklahoma the second week of the season, because I thought they'd still be working some things out. Ramondre Stevenson, their top running back that they actually do have, is suspended the first 4 games. He wouldn't be back for them. And I feel pretty wrong about that right now after I didn't pay the $55, even though Kellis Robinette thought I did. I joked about it to watch that game. But Spencer Rattler definitely looks legit. He looks like the top-ranked quarterback out of high school in the country. And it looks like Oklahoma is going to be a power to be reckoned with again, especially on the offensive side of the football. So he's good. I don't think there's any surprise with Texas and what they did. You know, UTEP's bad, and Sam Ehlinger is a veteran quarterback who's talented. Texas is a really good football team. So no surprises there. And we talked, John's right. Houston Baptist to me was probably the biggest surprise. The fact that they threw for nearly 600 yards against Texas Tech. Houston Baptist just got smoked the week before by North Texas team coming off a 4-win season. So that's a bad performance by Texas Tech. Iowa State, I actually saw that coming. I don't know if I saw them getting beat, but I thought it'd be a very close game. And the thing with Iowa State is they rely so heavily on the crowd support in Ames. That's where they pull off a lot of their upsets, you know, when they have a packed stadium with that energy in there. And when you don't have that, I think that really hurts them maybe more than a lot of other teams, because that they upset a lot of top 10 teams there in the last few years. Empty stadium, you know, Louisiana outscores them 24-0 to end the game from the second quarter on. And so that's a tough one for Iowa State, which was a lot of people's dark horse to, you know, I feel like that every year, the last 2 or 3 years, they're the kind of Cinderella that everyone thinks is going to be the darling, the media darling to win the Big 12 or be in that championship game. And they're just not at that level. And Brock Purdy, who was really the guy everyone was talking about potentially being the best quarterback in this league, really struggled. 16 of 35 passing yesterday for 145 yards, had an interception. They could not move the football. So KU, yeah.
It's just saying they threw out, you talked the opposite. Rattler was 10 of 12 to start the game, and the 2 that were the incompletions were both drops in the end zone.
Yeah, he's definitely legit, and I don't need to add anything to KU. I mean, I think a lot of us saw Coastal returned a lot of guys from last year, and KU didn't get revenge like they thought they would. So did you guys see the video of them in the locker room again?
That's what I was going to bring up. So both Kansas schools lose. KU and K-State lose. Arkansas State is pretty humble's a weird word, but, you know, they talked about expecting to win and other things like that. Fantastic. The flip is Coastal Carolina brings a sledgehammer and a rock painted up with rock chalk Jayhawk and destroy it on the locker room floor after the game was over, screaming like, you know, that they can't hang with us and everything else. What a wild look for a West Coast time slot late at night.
You could tell when that game started that Coastal thought they were going to win. I mean, you heard of every play, even on the first series of the game when they made a tackle, their sideline was really loud and energetic. They felt they were the better team, and they were the better team. And if I was a KU fan, I'd be really concerned about potentially winning a game this year. I think maybe the only bright spot for KU is maybe they found who their quarterback will be in Miles Kendrick, who played really well in the second half, and it probably won't be McVitie after watching that effort. So, but yeah, they've got a long ways to go.
So pretty weird one with a lot of the Big 12 teams having a week off, although Oklahoma State's going to play and next weekend Baylor's going to play. They're got a makeup game now, date with Houston, which that's a crazy thing to think about, throwing together a college football game on like no day's notice effectively. As things start to sort out, I guess, if you can say that, in the weirdest college football season ever, looking to the kickoff of Big 12 football here in a week and a half, where's the place that you think K-State has to make the biggest move as they get ready for Big 12 play?
Oh boy. I guess, I mean, I would just say it's the secondary and the offensive line, just trying to get that stuff figured out. I mean, because they they got to be able to run the ball. I mean, I know that the passing game really was working, and they left stuff out on the field. They probably could have scored in the 40s yesterday if things went well, if Skyler were on, just throwing the ball. But their bread and butter is running the football. I mean, they want to be able to do that, and you're going to have to be able to do that. So I just think it's going to be a combination of continuing to drink water through a fire hose for some of those young offensive linemen, and then probably the same thing in the secondary. And I think the secondary is going to have to include, assuming that everything goes health-wise the way it's looking right now, it's going to have to include some kind of maneuvering personnel-wise to get some things figured out.
Yeah, I would say the offensive line, Corey, is probably where they have to really spend these next 2 weeks to get better, because the offensive line can help out the defense in the secondary if they can sustain some long drives and get back to running the ball consistently and not having to spread it out and air it out 30-plus times, because that's not what they want to do. They want to be able to run the ball and then run play action, and throw the ball 20, 25 times a game and hit some of those big plays downfield. And you look at the offensive line yesterday and the running game overall. I went back this morning and painfully rewatched the game and charted it, which was not enjoyable to do, and charted every running play where they handed the ball off to the running backs. And, they ran 17 plays to the perimeter with the running backs off tackle. Those 12 carries to the perimeter off tackle. They had 73 yards, so about 6 yards per carry. That's not bad. And they got Deuce Vaughn on the perimeter a couple times, and he was able to get some big plays, and Trotter had a big play on the outside. But when they ran it in between the tackles, they did that 17 times in the game yesterday for 15 yards. It's 0.9 yards per carry when they ran it up the middle. And they weren't getting any sort of a push. This offense relies on being able to run the ball under center, up the middle. The longest gain they had on a run up the middle was 5 yards yesterday. And so they have to get a better push up front. And you look at the last 2 games, the Navy game and then this game going into this year, they averaged 2 yards per carry in total, 66 carries for 137 yards. And over the last 6 games, dating back to last year, now they're averaging 3 yards per carry. So it's a staple of Chris Kleinman's offense, Courtney Messingham's offense, to be able to run the ball. And they just haven't gotten a consistent push up front. And I think the offensive line, I think they like the group that they have. There's some talent there. They're just really inexperienced. They got guys playing in positions that they shouldn't be, but they have to out of necessity right now. Look, I love Cooper Beebe. I think he's going to be a stud here for 4 years, but I don't think he's a right tackle in your ideal system. I think he's a guard. And so if they can get Christian Duffy back, who they expect to start at right tackle against Oklahoma, get him back, you slide Beebe back to the inside, hopefully get Noah Johnson back. We don't know the severity of that injury. They put a brace on him, but he never came back in. Hopefully no sort of dislocation or anything like that, maybe a sprained elbow, hopefully something where he can get back on the field. Then your offensive line might be, start to get a little bit better if you can get guys more in their natural positions. So that's where I hope things, they're really going to have to improve these next couple of weeks, because they got to get back to controlling the ball and running the ball.
Well, being able to throw these chats in as a post game on Sunday, I think will be fun. Normally I'd probably let you guys get a little bit of talk in on the upcoming Chiefs game, but on a scale of 1 to 100, how excited were you for Thursday night season opener?
Well, coming out of it, I was very excited because, I don't even think this is crazy talk. And I said this on the air on Friday, and I've seen it backed up now by some people. And I think they got a chance to be the 2007 Patriots, man. Like, I think they can run the table. Because it was pretty easy to just dink and dunk the Texans, taking away Tyreek Hill and just everything else. Clyde Edwards-Helaire looks like he looks exactly like Kareem Hunt did when he first started his career with the Chiefs. And you pair that with Patrick Mahomes and what he is now. My God, I don't know how you stop that offense at all. And I think the defense continues to be a top 10 to 15 at worst NFL defense, which is plenty to pair with that. I'm cocky, confident Chiefs fan, John, but I don't really see anybody stopping them. I don't know. It was as exciting to me as like a ho-hum, pretty boring game, honestly, could be, just because of the ease with which the Chiefs did that. It felt like the Texans by the end of the third quarter had kind of just packed it in and came off, and Deshaun Watson had a chance to snap the ball before the end of the third quarter and just let it run out. It just felt like there was this element of like, okay, yeah, this is over. So that was the exciting part to me.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit more conservative than John with my cockiness when it comes to this. And so I can't go there where I think they'll go undefeated. I just think it's so hard in the NFL, and someone could have an off game, especially with COVID. we don't know who's going to get hit the hardest potentially. Hopefully there are no positive cases. I mean, I saw today again that there were no positive tests among coaches and players. Everyone at the NFL's a go. It's really remarkable. And I hope that continues. But, there's a likelihood that someone important is going to be hit, that you're going to have to sit out during a game. I'm a little concerned with the secondary now with Charvarius Ward, fracturing his hand. I don't know how long he'll be out with that, but you got Bashaud Breeland, your other corner that's starting, suspended 4 games. So they got to get through these next 3, hopefully, and then get Ward back in the next few weeks. But I thought L'Jarius Sneed looked great, who I complained about big time when we drafted him. John was in the group text, so shows what I know about football when it comes to that. But I think ultimately the Chiefs, I'll take them to go probably 13-3, 14-2, and that should get them the 1 seed in all likelihood. Yeah. So, and I think the Chiefs have one little bit of an advantage. It's not a huge one, but the fact that they're allowing 17,000 fans in the stadium, it gives a little bit of a home atmosphere. Well, I think I saw the Jaguars are the only team in the NFL today that's allowing any fans in their stadium. Fans, yeah. So
it was pretty cool to watch a team be able to play that well. And I agree with John. I don't think they ever shifted out a second. They've got like 4 gears left before they even really try to crank it up. So pretty impressive.
Well, yeah, when you add a running game in with Edwards-Helaire, I mean, that's and they didn't even use him in the passing game, which is what LSU did a lot with him. And, they're probably saving some of that stuff back. They're definitely loaded.
Okay, so a couple things for today. Who are you most excited about? Are you most excited about watching Cam play for the Patriots? You want to see Tom Brady go up against the Saints with the Bucs? Are you holding out for tonight for Cowboys-Rams? Anything interesting today, or are you just taking this one out?
I think it's the top 2 things there. To be honest, I haven't looked through the full schedule today, but I am very intrigued by what exactly is going to look like seeing Tom Brady in a different uniform. Tom Brady and Gronk, nonetheless, in a different uniform, and Cam with the Patriots. I mean, I love Cam Newton, and that seems like such an odd fit. Both he and Belichick, he and that city, with the history that city has. So, I think those things to me are by far the most intriguing NFL storylines.
McDaniels drafted Tebow on purpose. It's so Cam's what he thought Tim Tebow could even be. I think it might be kind of interesting to see what they do with the running quarterback if they keep him healthy.
Yeah, I think that'll be the most interesting thing, Corey, today is just seeing, we've seen Tom Brady for 20 years in that system, dink and dunk and throw to the running backs out of the backfield. And Cam Newton obviously does that too. Christian McCaffrey had probably 115 catches last year for the Panthers, with Cam throwing the ball to him a lot of the time until he got hurt. But I'll be curious how they adjust schematically and change their system to acclimate Cam Newton. So that'll be interesting. And it's a Dolphins team that actually loaded up a little bit in the offseason, spent a lot of money in free agency, going to try and make a push, and obviously coming off the heels of winning in New England last year to make my Sunday to give the Chiefs the 2nd seed in the playoffs, which was huge, obviously. So I'll be curious how the Dolphins match up. I mean, historically, they have given the Patriots a hard time in these games. And so it's a 7.5-point spread. It'd be interesting to see how close Miami hangs. And then, the Saints-Bucs game, I think, will be a great game, and be curious. I mean, it's a neutral site game, essentially, with no fans. So it'll be interesting to see how Tom Brady, does with all those weapons that he has. And do they try and stretch the field a lot? Will he throw the ball downfield, or will he dink and dunk? I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see these games today.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I think we'll call this one a wrap. Normally I was getting ready to say, hey, we can open a beverage or two and chat a little bit about football, but it seemed a little calm after week number 1. Hopefully we'll see what we can do here in a couple weeks as the Cats go take on the Sooners. So enjoy your football Sunday, and we'll catch up with you guys soon. Good to see you this morning.
Sounds good.
Good to see you too.